Okay, yeah. Let's just get started. Today we're going to talk about migrating cloud management infrastructure to OpenStack and its testing challenges. With an example of Rackspace's decision to move one of its cloud management infrastructure to OpenStack. So just before we get started, we'll understand how many of us are aware of what is cloud computing. Good. Yeah, just to put it in a simple words, say I have a business, I'm doing a retail business, I'm doing good. Now I want to expand my business, I want to open an online store. So I have my e-commerce application ready, I want to deploy my application. How do I do? Do I look for an option to buy physical servers and host my application? That could be an option, but it adds a maintenance cost to me. I'll have to maintain those physical servers. The alternative option. So I'll look for any of the vendors who is providing me servers online. I'll go register with the vendors and I'll host my application and it's ready. How is it useful? So say you want to expand your business. So you want to take your business to US as well. So it doesn't make sense for you to buy a physical server in a data center in US. Just buy a server who is offering a server who has a data center in the US and who is offering a server, and deploy your application there and you are live. So this is the way it is helpful, and this is you're getting a more processing power, and you get a less maintenance, and it's being more reliable and more scalable. Okay, what does Rackspace do in terms of this? Rackspace provides infrastructure as a service. Say someone wants to start their business, they can just sign up with the Rackspace and buy the servers as per their need and start using those services and start making use of the cloud computing services. Right? Okay. Yeah. We'll just discuss about. As Rackspace has decided to move to OpenStack, similarly there would be many other vendors. They are interested in moving towards OpenStack. We'll just discuss about the challenges and what are the approaches that can be taken. So we'll discuss about what is OpenStack and how Rackspace is involved here, and what is the Rackspace's cloud infrastructure, and why did Rackspace decide to move to OpenStack? What are the challenges it has, and what are the testing challenges we did? Right? Okay. We'll understand what is OpenStack. OpenStack is a open source cloud management software, wherein it provides set of independent software. You can make use of them to manage your cloud infrastructure. And OpenStack started as a joint venture of Rackspace and NASA. The main intention for them is to provide a open source software for the cloud vendors. So if I have a big data center, I want to become a cloud vendor. Here we can just make use of OpenStack software and start managing your cloud infrastructure. Okay. How does OpenStack architecture look like? So as I said, OpenStack has a set of components. You can choose to deploy them independently, or what are the components you are interested to make use of. Say I have a big data center, and I just need to get an OpenStack software. I have a hardware here, and I'll deploy the components as per my need. Right? Say, okay, I have a big infrastructure. I have a physical server ready now. I want to build 20 Windows servers, 50 Linux servers. So how do I manage? Just install OpenStack, and your infrastructure is ready. So here it has several components like Horizon. So once you install OpenStack, it provides a dashboard for you to manage your OpenStack. So there is a component called Nova. It provides a facility for you to manage your computing resources. So whenever you create a new server in your infrastructure, it intelligently computes the resources that are required, and it allocates the memory and size And whenever you want to take out your server from your infrastructure, it just assigns back to your infrastructure there. And it has a networking services called, oh sorry, there is a mistake over here. It is Neutron. It is called Neutron. So it provides a service to manage your networking services. Say whenever a VM is created, you have to assign an IP to those VM, and you want to create a network among the VM. So you don't have to specifically anything from outside. You just create your VM and it talks to Neutron to assign VP and manage your network. And it has a glance to manage your images. Say, as I said, one want to build a set of Linux servers. How do I do? I take a standard copy of base images, say Linux, Windows, whatever I have, and store it in my storage. And Glance take care of giving those images whenever you want to create a new VM. Also, you have a VM and you want to take a snapshots of your VM. Say whenever there is a failure in the VM which is running, you want to restore those VM. Just talk to Glance and ask it to build a VM out of it, whatever the snapshot I have taken, and your VM is ready there. Similarly, there is a block storage services called Cinder. So it provides a service to store your data. So just it's as good as your external hard disk. So say I have a 100 GB VM now. So I want to manage my data also. I want to attach 500 GB to my VM. Just make use of Cinder. Say I want 500 GB VM, 500 GB data. Create a disk with 500 GB. Attach it to the VM we have created. You are there. Your VM is of 600 GB now. Similarly, there are several other components does OpenStack provide. There is a orchestration component called Heat, and there is a Trove for your database services, and for your cluster management there is a component called Sahara. Okay, these are the big vendors that are actively contributing to OpenStack right now. Apart from this, there are around 200 plus companies who are contributing to OpenStack. Now, OpenStack is kind of one of the biggest open source software right now. Okay, yeah, Ram will take over.
So we just said that Rackspace is one of the contributors in the open source cloud infrastructure. So Rackspace currently has two infrastructures in place. One is the first gen, which is a legacy system, and there is another one which is called next gen, which is built on top of the OpenStack. So let's come into the first gen architecture, how it looks like. Say some users have been subscribed to Rackspace. Then the users will be able to manage their infrastructure. So if you look so the user can create, say he want to build a new VM. So he can do it in two ways. So there is an UI interface, or there is an API. So from either of them, they can use actions and to create build a new VM. So take for example, we are building a VM. So he will go to a web interface. He'll say create a new VM for me. So the flow looks something like that. So when you make a call, it will go to API. API indeed calls something called application manager. So what does that application manager does is it has some logic within that which will find out which server it has to go and which is the best suitable server, so that the resources allocated are good, and also all the corresponding servers fit in the same place, so that talk time, input, output, the operations are pretty low. So if you say servers, right, server is nothing but a rack of it's a rack of blade servers. So maybe you people know about the blade servers. Say blade server is nothing but it's a powerful machine with a lot of computing power and a lot of memory, so which can does operation pretty quickly. So a physical rack will look something like that, which has like multiple blade servers within that. So this application manager will call one of the server manager. This server manager is a software which is sitting on top of the hardware. So this guy will look into all the blade servers and pick the one which has appropriate for the required VM which we are building, which is customer VMs. So we can also take the snapshots. So snapshots are nothing but a backup of your running VM. So that's also managed on top of this server manager. So you can do many other actions. If you see there, you can build a VM, you can manage your existing VMs, like you can resize them, increase your memory, increase the CPU, all the stuff. And you can take the backups, and if also you can schedule those backups regularly. So next is the next-gen environment. So it is built on top of the OpenStack. So OpenStack is at the core. So it will use all the components which Shiva just described. So on top of that, so it has something called global auth. So if you go back to the previous there's something called Keystone. But Rackspace don't use the existing Keystone, one of the components in the OpenStack, but it has built on its own identity service. So we are specifically saying this because OpenStack, you can pick whatever components which you want build, and also you can just ignore which you don't want to actually build, and you can build your own custom software on top of that. So it's very customizable and flexible. So we have something called a UI interface, which we from Rackspace terms called Reach. So we have a specific UI because the UI which is provided by Horizon, the one which is provided by OpenStack, it doesn't help us to serve our purpose because we have two infrastructures in place. So we need to support the existing legacy system as well. So a custom interface has been built on top of this. So building, as the name suggests, it is nothing but how we will build the customers for whatever usage they are doing on VMs. So coming to the whole challenge of migration. So Rackspace, as I just told, have two infrastructure in place. As a business perspective of Rackspace, it's pretty difficult for them to maintain two different infrastructures. So the first gen is in different code base, which is on Ruby, which is solely proprietary code of Rackspace. The next gen, which we told, which was built on top of OpenStack, is in Python. So from a business point of view, right, it's a very high maintenance for them. That's because, say there is some defect in first gen. So it should be completely fixed by the developers of Rackspace. So they need to maintain the code, they need to support the customers. And from the operations perspective, right, say they have to train those operation guys. So they need to train both in the environments which are different code base, different architectures, and different support things. So it will become too much of trouble for them. Added to that, the next gen, because it's built on top of OpenStack, so it will be pretty easy for them because OpenStack has a lot of contributors. So if there are any bug fixes, many other people can fix it. So it's not just the Rackspace which is owning the whole issue. And also, if there are improvements, they're like, it's continuously improving and growing. So coming to why actually Rackspace people are using the OpenStack is its scalability. So it's pretty easily scalable. If you just put that physical rack which is shown, we can just grow. We can keep it, and it means we grown by another rack. Whereas in the first gen, if you just keep another rack, it's a lot of logic which will go into it to just fix one particular rack. So it's very difficult to scale in first gen, but whereas in OpenStack, the whole architecture is such that you can just grow by putting some few hardwares in place. So coming back to the migration, so based upon all these factors, it's pretty clear that Rackspace don't want to have maintained two different environments. So it definitely want to move to OpenStack architecture. So currently in the first gen, there are around 100,000 VMs existing. So it wanted to move all those 100,000 VMs to the next gen environment. So when we say moving all those VMs, what does it really mean is we are actually moving those VMs from one physical server to another physical server over LAN. So there are a lot of data being copied. So for example, if you say like one server can be 500 GB, you are like that there are like 100,000 VMs over there, you are doing a lot of operations over there. So, and also when you are moving, we wanted to maintain the state of the VM. So you don't definitely want the customer to get worried about the data because they will be in a state, they will be running their own websites or whatever it is. So they wanted the process in the same state. So they just don't want to bring down the VM for the sake of migrating our. So we need to make sure that all the process running in the VM is as it is when you do the migration and they are not get affected. So that actually means that minimum downtime experience for the customer. We need to take care of that. So once we move those VMs from first gen to next gen, it has to have all the operations which will be carried on next gen as well without any issues. Because we are moving to a different architecture altogether, so it should be able to take care of all the actions which are in next gen. So yeah, once we have moved the VMs, that means we have to move all the corresponding snapshots or backups of the VM as well to the next generation environment. So when you and along with that, each VM will have their own IP system. So its own IP management system, which we want to move along because generally servers will have static IPs. So all the business people will like configure their servers, DNS entries, all those things based upon IP. They just don't want to change their IP because we migrated from one environment to another. So we need to migrate the whole IP management system along with that. So we try to put it in a simple way. What does the whole migration process look like? Say this is a VM in the first gen. So we are trying to migrate it to next gen. So when we trigger a migration, what does that do is it will take a snapshot. As I said, snapshot is nothing but a backup of the existing VM. When you take a snapshot, immediately there will be two copies. One is the original copy. Let's start like say the VM is around 500 GB. So when we did a little calculation, it turned out that to transfer 2 GB data, it took around 1 minute. That means for 500 GB, it will be around 250 minutes. So when we trigger a migration, it will take the copy. So if it is 500 GB, this copy will be 500 GB. On top of that, there is a delta copy, which is nothing but after the snapshot, whatever we took, there may be some actions which will be taken by the customer, some input, output, operation, some processing. So whatever he is doing after the time of a snapshot, all that will be captured in this particular copy. So this will be 500 GB. On top of that, this will be delta from the time of snapshot. So first we'll copy the base, which is 500 GB. So the VM will be running as it is because we are only copying a copy of this particular snapshot. The whole VM will be as it is running. Once we copy the whole VM to the next gen, we'll again come back here and we will, so say this whole process took 4 hours. So this diff copy is nothing but whatever actions which happen in those 4 hours. So it say that in those 4 hours it may have grown up to another GB. So when we, at this point of time, what we'll do is pause the VM. So we don't shut down the VM, pause the VM. What does the pause the VM means? It will be in the same state, but all the process will just stay in the memory as it is. So this 1 GB file will be copying here. It may take maybe 1 minute or so. So once the diff delta copy is also here, what we'll do is we'll combine both the things together. We'll create a dummy VM in the next gen environment and attach those VM disks to that and do some configuration and bring back the VM. So in this whole process, there is no shutdown of the VM. It's only, if you really look at it, it's only like 1 to 5 minutes of downtime for the customer, not more than that. So this will really make sure that customer doesn't have any downtime. Yeah. Sure, we'll take that.
So, Ram, one question on that. When you say the delta part of it, what I understand is it will also remove the files that have been deleted within that time frame, right?
Yeah,
or
it will
just modify or add the things?
No, it will include everything. So delete, modify, all those things will be stable in there.
This becomes your read only disk.
Correct.
This is your read and write.
Correct.
So your diff is whatever will happen.
So when we are doing clubbing both the things together, so the delete part will be taken care of there.
So if there is any like transactional stuff
Excuse me.
happening,
We'll take questions in the session. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. what are the challenges we face testing, what all we had to consider during our testing process, and what are the challenges we faced, and how did we address. So some of the challenges we had is having an environment ready for our testing, and how do we migrate our IP management system to NextGen, and how did we test the VM migrations, and how did we consider integration tests, performance tests, and how did we consider doing a test in production as well. Okay, environment setup. So as we told, there are two environments, and whenever I have to do migration from first gen to next gen, and I have to test it. But then the next gen, the build cycle is little higher. So whenever there is a code deploy I'm expecting, I had to wait for a longer time. So initially the feature whatever we had developed in the first gen, and we were running the first gen environment completely, so we had a flexibility to deploy whenever we required. But in the next gen, we had to figure out something. So what we decided, we thought we'll create our own environment and then go ahead with the testing. So we made use of DevStack. We had our own hardware system ready, and DevStack provides a clone of OpenStack version. So just clone the DevStack version and configure the configurations the way you want, and just specify what all components you want to install, and run command called stack.sh. So this setups your environment. Now make your first gen environment talk to this DevStack environment. And so here it's a pretty good learning curve for you. I think most of you have tried setting up a DevStack. So here, if say you have messed up something and something is broken, you have a complete control over setting up it back. It just provides a feature called unstack it and just stack it. So your environment is up there, and install whatever the software you have built on top of it and start testing. So here we can think of creating our own environment whenever there is a need. So we don't really have to wait for environment to be ready.
When Shiva said the release time is pretty high in the next gen, what does it mean? Like a lot of teams actually actively working on the next gen. There being so many components around there, so there were too many people playing with their code, and also it's an open source, right? So the release cycle has to go through some review process and all. So the whole cycle is a little bit bigger. So that will make a little bit difficult for us to continuously test and find out the issues. So.
Okay. Yeah. How did we test our IP migration management to NextGen? So our challenge was to, whenever the VM is migrated to NextGen, we had to make sure that its IP is retained. And now your IP management system is being managed by NextGen system, right? So your VMs are migrated. I had to understand how is NextGen managing your IP management system. I need to understand how our networks are being created, how our subnets are being created, how our IPs are allocated from the subnets. So there were, say I have a subnet, there were some of the IPs that are non-allocatable in the NextGen environment. By default, when you create a subnet, NextGen environment says these are the IPs you cannot allocate. But first-gen says these are the IPs you can allocate. So we had to figure out what are those IPs that are not allocatable. Then we just wrote a script to make those as IP also allocatable. Then we just try to migrate the VMs, and we had our own scripts to just verify that your IP is still working, and just try logging into the VM and see the configurations and make sure your IPs are being carried out properly. So other challenge was, NextGen says you should have a IPv6, but first-gen didn't have a IPv6 facility at all. So here what we did was, whenever we were migrating, we were just assigning a dummy IP and migrating a VM. So you had to make sure that that IP is not accessible for the customer, because you're giving a new IP for free, right? So we again wrote some of the scripts to check IP configs on the VM and make sure that this IPv6 just resides dummy IP on the next gen environment.
when he was talking about like unassailable IPs and all, right? So it's like something like, say, for example, like there is a IP range of like 0 to 255. So only from 0 to 4 it's unallocatable, and from here everything is allocatable. But in next gen it may not be the case. So there may be 0 to 6 which is not allocatable, and again at the end there may be some unallocatable thing, and only these things are being you should be able to allocate. So when you try to do this, right, so you need to make sure that you are in compatible thing mode, so that you don't mess up losing some and creating something else here. So we need to do some testing around this to make sure that nothing is being lost when you're trying to migrate IPs from one system to the other system.
Yeah, biggest challenge was migrating the VM migration and testing that. So say I have migrated my VM from first gen to next gen. Whenever a VM is created, there is one more service that goes into the VM, that Rackspace specifically adds that service to manage that VM. So the service which is going to the VM in first gen was not compatible to the service in the next gen. So we had to test that as well. See, for that, we had to remove an existing service from the VM, install the compatible service, and then migrate the VM. So for that, say if I want to test that, there are set of images that Rackspace provides. There are images from Ubuntu family, there are images from RHEL family, Windows. So how did I make sure that these services are being taken out and the new services are uploaded? So we made use of application package called Fabric. It's a Python application. Yeah. So you can make use of this Fabric and just provide the credentials of the VM, and it offers you a set of APIs, the operations you want to perform on the remote machine. So just pass the credentials to that VM, credentials of the VM to Fabric, and specify the actions you want to run on that. So it does take care of doing all those actions. And similarly, say my Ubuntu images, I need to manage it with TPKG package manager. And your RHEL images, you have to manage those images with RPM. So just tell them that, tell Fabric that this is the Ubuntu image, and specifically say that manage it with the DPKG package manager. Similarly for RHEL family. I'll be running the script and showing how did we achieve that. Okay, and we wanted to make sure services running on the VM are still being retained. So how did we do? Again, still we made use of the Fabric, but we tried to create some of the services our own, and we put it to background, and we did made use of a service ID, process ID, and then we did migrate the VM to next gen and try to open the process back again from the background. Right? So here you are making sure that your process is still being retained. And how do you make sure your data loss is not happening? We have a database services running, and we were continuously writing values to database and making sure that our database has all the values updated. Say I'm updating all the rows in a table, and keep that process running, and migrate your VM to NextGen, and open the table and just make sure that your table has all the rows as expected. Also, yeah. Here we also had one of the challenge. Whenever your VM is created, say it has 1 GB of memory. It also assigns 2 GB of swap memory. So swap memory comes into picture. Say whenever your memory is full, your processes gets moved to swap memory. We have to make sure that the processes running in swap memory are also being consumed, are in the same state in the next-gen environment. We made use of malloc script to get hold of your entire memory, and then trigger some of the scripts to make sure that your services are gone to swap memory, and then other same script to put the services into background, and then try resuming those services from next-gen. All right. So again, we also had some of the automation scripts to make sure that VM is running as expected on the next gen. So if next gen provides some of the actions, apart from what first gen was providing, we just made use of some of the existing scripts that were available. And yeah, failure handling. So VM could, whenever your migration is being happening, it could fail at any point of time. Whenever you are making a call to create that VM in the next gen, and whenever you are transferring the data, whenever you are trying to configure the VM on the next gen, just we try to make sure that the failures are being handled properly. Say whenever the VM is being migrated, we try to kill the copy process. Whenever it is being configured, we go to the next gen environment, try to kill that process, and make sure that the process is failing, and VM has to be restored in the same state on the first gen environment. Yeah. Just to get a sense of how we did achieve that, we'll run a script and share the script. And probably I'll share those scripts with you later.
So just coming to that swap thing which Shiva was talking about. So swap is not nothing but it's hard disk, but it's an extended memory. Say you have this RAM. So this is swap disk is nothing but physical hard disk. So in Windows term, it is virtual RAM. So when memory is filled, right, it will be written into a hard disk, which is acts as an extended memory. So what we did was we wrote a script which will just fill the physical RAM, and then eventually it will fall into swap disk and it will start using it. So when it used most of the swap disk, it's nothing, we write a file actually. So say we write a file 1 in there. Once it wrote down whole file into memory, what we did was we paused the system here, we migrated. So in the destination, what we did was try to pull back that file and write it again to a file system. And then we compared the hash of the both to see that the whole system we are able to retrieve as it is without any data like corruption or problem. And we make sure that the things in the swap memory has been handled well as well.
This is a remote machine I have right now, and I'm keeping a watch on my memory, what is happening on the memory. If you look at this, there is just 200 MB of memory free in your main memory, and most of your swap memory is free. Now I want to make sure that your swap memory, your processes are going to swap memory.
So here, swap
Yeah.
it's all.
Okay. It just this process just uninstalls the previous version of the services that it had and installs the compatible services, and then triggers the memory in the swap memory. So it just updated the services on that VM. Okay, if you look at this, it has now consumed 300 MB of your swap memory. Now, whatever you trigger as a process, now it will go to your swap memory now. Right, I'm continuously writing some data to a file, and that is now running in the swap memory. And I'll make use of I just get hold of a process ID and log into the next gen VM and make sure that these processes are still running. Alright. Okay. Testing prioritization. So we decided to give a priority for our integration testing well in advance, because there are lot many other components that are involved when we say we are migrating to next gen. What we thought, like whenever our feature is ready, instead of giving there are two features which are ready, instead of giving a priority for the second feature to test, if the first feature is ready to be tested with integrated environment, we decided to pick that first, because as we said, it takes, if there is any issues, it takes lots of time for next-gen environment to come up with the fixes and then deploy those. So here, we could really find some of the defects in the beginning itself, and in our system as well, and in the next-gen environment as well. That was a good feedback for us. Okay, and also we did plan for production testing. So what are the testing? Unless you do it in production, you are not sure that it's working perfectly. So yeah, we did choose this for our production switching a smallest rack which has very minimal number of servers. Even though it had minimal number of servers, they are customer VMs. You don't have to, if there is any effect to those VMs, the customer business is lost. So here we gave an idea to do a code change, so that the test VMs we create in that specific rack, so they are the ones should be able to migrate. So the developers did the code change so that only these VMs are enabled for the migration, and rest of the VMs are not affected here.
So what we did was we went a step ahead, and for the sake of proper production testing, what we did was we asked the developers to write a code which makes sure that there is some you will give a list of VMs in that minimum rack set. So you'll say we don't affect any of the customer VMs, only make use of the VMs which we mentioned. Those are the test VMs, and never even touch VMs of the customers. So that is to make sure that the customers are still intact and we can do the production testing hassle-free. So just to get that confidence in the production as well.
Okay. We had to consider some of the performance testing as well, and give a metrics to client. So whenever your VMs are being migrated, we had to calculate what is the time that is taking for any of the VM to be migrated, and what is the average downtime of the VM. So we had some of the Python scripts in hand to calculate what is the time it is taking, and we did made use of the scripts to trigger as many migrations as possible in parallel. So in simple, even your item gives you an option to trigger your parallel actions at the same time. That will be the simple one, or you can make use of thread processes in Python. And whenever the VM is migrated to next-gen, there could be many other operations happening on the server in the next-gen. So we went to the server in the next-gen and tried to create lot many IO operations there and make sure that at what point your VM will fail migration, and what is the next-gen server, what is the capacity that next-gen server has to take your load. Yeah.
So if you just put in summary like what are all takeaways. So one important thing is it really helped us to have our own test environment which took out the dependency on the multiple teams, which made our testing quite fast and a lot of feedback and bugs we found. So this being totally a technical project, right? So you need to get in a lot of small details of how the things are being worked. Otherwise, it's very difficult for you to understand what's happening. So so if it demands, it's always good to go to that extra step and leave the boundary of you being only QA and that's a dev work. Took that extra step and try to know more about the system. So automation. So this being only a one-time thing, it's not worth it to do automate because the whole code will be using only once. So it's not we are migrating again and again. It's only one of them. So we decided not to do any automation. But at the same time, wherever it's possible, we try to make use of small scripts in place so that it will make our whole testing process pretty easy, as Shiva mentioned few scripts. So, and also planning of your integration tests. This especially is very beneficial when you have dependency on many teams. So that whenever you are ready to test their related code, do it as early as possible so that they can do their fix and come back to us. So in that cycle, we can continue our testing without any problem. Test in production, yeah, it's a very important task because whatever testing you do in the staging doesn't matter anything till you don't get any confidence in the production. So you need to plan it well in advance because business has to make some changes as well to accommodate that because they need to communicate to the customers and everyone else. Yep. Okay, that's about it. Question. Sorry, someone was asking some question. We can go back to that slide if you still have that question. He left, is it? Okay, no worries.
So when you said that after the migration we started the testing process and all. So when it comes to customer views, the customer views we kept intact. So whether they are already migrated or we kept them in the legacy system.
So because still we did actually started the migration process. So they are put in place as it is, but before we move customer VMs, we thought of having our own test VMs. Yeah, so we created some test VMs in the production and we'll migrate them first and make sure everything is working. Then we'll actually start moving the customer VMs.
So I think your question is what happens when you migrate the first gen VM to next gen and what happens to the VM in first gen?
No, not like that. Here is correctly. Just wanted to know, we classified test VMs versus the client VMs. Okay. So we again use the methodology or we do it on sampling basis. Means when we select the test VMs, what basis we choose?
Test VMs in the sense they are our own VMs.
Yeah, right. But there may be the different configurations we can have for custom VMs.
Right.
So on sampling basis, do we
Oh, okay.
So
how we decide that this set will be sufficient for to migrate and test?
right. In the beginning we decided the smallest RAM, which has a very minimal number of servers. Even though there is something failing, it is not affecting entire business. And there we went ahead and added our servers, and we configured. Again, we asked for a configuration so that only our servers are eligible for the migration. Nothing else is affected. And once we are done with the testing, then
Sorry.
it is taken to the.
So you are asking how we come up, what kind of test server we need to build up.
Exactly. Means when we start with the testing plan.
Yeah, I'll tell. So we actually have around 30 kind of distros, 30 various distros. Distros nothing but OS, Linux, Ubuntu and all. So we went to the production and see what are the maximum number of VMs which are used, the more possible number of VMs usage and all. So from that we come up with around 10 to 15 possible most used VM list with some various combinations. So we will be developing those set of VMs in production and we'll try to migrate. So we cannot really go with all possible combinations. So in the most possible
Full partitioning.
yeah, yes.
Is there any rollback mechanism if any fails on production?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, at whatever the point it is failing, say your HTTP calls are failing, your copy of the VM itself is failing, we'll make sure that the VM is taken back to the same state in the first gen environment from where it was started, and your VM is running properly on the first gen.
And also, is there any logs to debug
Yeah,
what is the
there will be
billing and
So
what is
we
the-
have a whole interface for a backend support guys itself. So they'll just click the VM which we are migrating, they'll show all the list. So the VM will be back up and running, but it will still show us the logs so that the ops guys will look into it and see okay where exactly it went wrong. So there will be no problem with the VM. So customer doesn't even know what there is something as a failure in the backend. It will come back to the state as it is. The ops guys will know.
rollback is automatic or we have to there is a human interface?
No, it's auto rollback. So,
Okay. If server is not up, then it take action to rollback automatically.
right, say you are copying your VM to other environment. We have a time check. After the timeout happens, if your copy process is not yet completed, we'll kill that process and again we'll try to resume server up on the version environment automatically.
So everywhere we have proper checks over there. We'll see for certain time and see if that doesn't happen. We'll simply come back, roll back in.
Maybe that IP not provided
Configured?
that server. So
Correct.
we ping that server that is no response. So we have to go back, find out what is the problem and
Yeah. So Yeah, in some cases, it's like we went almost to the end and it's only few configuration things which are doing, so those will be manual interventions. Otherwise, most of the thing, it's totally automated.
So
Yeah.
I had a question. So while the migration was happening, as you said, right, is there something that went wrong? Did something go wrong ever? Or like even if while
Yeah, it's
testing,
always expected that.
exactly, right? So
it goes wrong.
there you talked about having a diff. So how did you manage all of that?
Right. So you have those two copies as is in the first gen environment. So if something went wrong in the sense in the VM, there cannot be anything
Sure.
which goes wrong. So
One
if there
copy.
is something wrong, that could be our process which is doing that, right? So we for everything first thing we have a timeout configuration. So within that time, if expected result is not there, kill that process and roll back it from the previous state to the first state.
So when you say we have some timeout check, it's more about it. We'll have a progress file which will keep updating. So if we at any time the progress file is not updated for like 10 minutes or so, so that means something is going on.
But that time of it depend on the bandwidth. and
Yeah, so
performance.
that's why I'm saying this. So they are not actually looking at
I
the.
mean, everything is working fine, but go like a slow. But you are
Yeah.
time frame in 10 minutes, then
Yeah, that's what.
to
So
see that
that-
go back to.
Yeah, that is what we are trying to address here. So there is a progress file. Not they don't actually look at the actual data which is being transferred, but a progress file. This progress file will be overwritten every 5 seconds. So if the progress file itself is not written, that means something went wrong. So it's we are not actually checking like how much data is being transferred, but a progress file. So progress file will be there's a read write on the progress file. So we'll just look at the time of the progress file. If there is no action on the progress file for a long time, that means something bad went. So it's not about the actual data transfer because that there may be bandwidth latency, there may be some other issues.
There
So
are many reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
A small example, say if it is taking 4 hours to transfer your entire VM to next gen, there is no point waiting for 4 hours to timeout to happen. So that's the reason we are maintaining this progress file. Say for every 5 seconds, even though there is a little amount of data updated, we just update the progress file, making sure that process is continuous.
Okay. Yeah. So any more questions? If not, we'll wrap it up. People can still ask us.
Excellent. So typically, typically in a typical e-commerce application, you have a lot of payments and transactions that are happening. Like when you go to payment gateways, so if a situation is like that happening, and then you're trying to migrate a VM, particular VM, how would you handle that scenario?
So yeah, so we try to address as much as possible, not giving customer inconvenience. But there is that 1 minute of time which will happen. During that time, we'll clearly mention to the customer that you need to stop your operation. Maybe in the website you'll say server is under maintenance for like that particular time. That we cannot really help because it may be a data write as well. It may be a transaction to a third party as well. There may be many other things which can happen. So as long as it within the scope of that VM process or memory, we try to maintain the state. But if it is actually a call to third party or some other read write, so in that time there will be a downtime. So we clearly mention, communicate with the customer saying that maybe in that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you will make your website go down and.
We do that in advance notification.
Yes.
One more. Is there process running? There is some process running for particular time span, and we have the maintenance window on that frame. Then we wait for that process to complete, or we kill the process and go ahead.
No, we give that option to customer when customer wants to migrate that VM. One option is customer can trigger their migration their own. Say, this is a good time for me to migrate. Say it's a very minimal transaction happening time.
Is there any check to check that?
So
any
we
process-
communicate that to customer,
Okay.
saying make sure that you are initiating your migrations in your comfortable time zone.
So we are running out of time. If you guys still have some questions, you can just come to us and we can address it.
You can also share the scripts with the Python script.
Thanks, Ram and Shirab. Just a small token of appreciation. Right. So, thanks. So we're gonna just